Hey guys, if you've watched my Please Help How to Adult video, when I was answering the question about what we should do with our lives and the purpose of, working and being an adult, I mentioned that I was a Christian. And as promised, I wanted to come back and kind of revisit that and talk about what that means and why I personally feel like this is probably the most important video I've ever made. Now, before I launch into that, I just want to preface that by saying I know with this type of subject, religion, politics, anything like that, that it can get pretty touchy. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions, and unfortunately with things like this, everybody seems to think that they're right, that everybody else is wrong, and if you don't subscribe to the same type of thinking that I do, then you're obviously stupid. Now, that's not the type of attitude I want to go into this video with. Honestly, I just want to convey that as humans, we have to all understand just how limited we are. That the absolute best that any of us can do is take the information that we have and make the best decision possible with that information. Whether it comes to life, a job, a school, picking a spouse, picking a girlfriend, relationships, anything like that, the most that any of us can ask for is take the information that we know and make the best decision with that we can. And so for me personally, I kind of just want to share with you that that's what I've done with this accepting Christianity as my faith. And the question that I want to start with by asking you, the viewer, is, what is the purpose of your life? Personally, when I was thinking about this question years ago and considering the way that society has kind of conditioned us to think that, life is about, getting a job, raising a nice family, providing creature comforts for that family, and just living kind of an overall comfortable lifestyle, that it's really not all that different from the music videos that we see and the music that we hear about, girls and money and cars. Now, granted, I'm not like Lamborghini Mercy, with like my child and my wife and my nice little house, but underneath it all, it really wasn't all that different. And what it really boiled down to was just getting things that I thought would make me happy. And that's kind of why I brought it up in the How to Adult video, because if your purpose is looking for happiness, whether it's through your job or through the means that your job provides you, that at the end of the day, these are things that aren't going to last. Money will get spent, things will break, and then people will eventually die. And so for me personally, when I was questioning whether life was about just obtaining all these things that would eventually disappear, it just eventually led me to an existential crisis where I was asking questions like, why am I here and what is the purpose of my life? Now, I was always raised as a Christian in a Christian family, but it wasn't until I started asking all this that the question dawned on me, doesn't God want me to be happy? Which kind of leads me to the first segue in this video here. I know some of you watching this may not actually even believe that there's a God. And so the question that I want to challenge those of you that feel that way with is, when you look around you, why is there something rather than nothing? Now, I know that there's probably 1,000 different answers and a million different reasons, but just personally for me, when I was considering the question, learning about how intricately balanced everything needs to be for us to even exist on this earth was enough to blow my mind and make me think that God has to exist. I mean, from things so small down to how the cells in our body interact and how these processes in our body work together to keep us alive, up to the grand scale of how light and matter and energy are perfectly balanced in this universe for life to exist on this earth. For me, I just could not deny that a creator has to exist. Much like how, we look at a car and we see all the different systems and how everything comes together to create something that's operational. We look at the systems in the world around us and our bodies ourselves as systems, and I just could not deny that all of this had to be intricately created. And now going back to my question of, if all this was created and God exists, then why wouldn't he want me to be happy? The biggest light switch got flipped in my head when I was listening to someone, I don't remember who it was, but they said that God is more concerned about my holiness than my happiness. Now, what does it mean to be holy, and why would it concern God more for us to be holy than happy? Holiness is to become more like God in our character, in our personalities, in our behavior, to become more and more like God. But in our fallenness and our brokenness as human beings, we can't do that. It really only takes 5 minutes of watching the news or reading any news website to see just how broken the world is and how fallen humanity is. And even for me personally, I know when I'm left to my own devices, I'm prone to anger, jealousy, envy, and all these other things that cause anger and strife. Seeing the way that I reacted when people offended me or spoke wrong about me or my family, even with those that were closest to me, like my family and people that I loved, I couldn't treat with respect and patience like I wanted to. And I just recognized in myself more and more that human selfishness, that fallenness, and just how far away from being holy I really was. But you see, it's exactly at this point of just recognizing how far away we are from that standard that the beauty of the gospel steps in. For me personally, it was exactly at that point that learning about the person of Jesus Christ, who he is and what he came to do, that opened my eyes to the beauty of the gospel. And so for the second second segue here, for those of you that don't know what Christianity is about, Christianity is centered around this person, Jesus Christ, who was a real person, a man who existed about 2,000 years ago, and since we just celebrated Christmas, was born as a baby and lived 33 years. Now, we as Christians believe that this man, Jesus, was God incarnate, meaning God himself literally took on the form of a man and came to earth in order to walk amongst us people. And at the end of his short life, he was killed, hung on a Roman cross and killed, and then buried in a tomb, and then 3 days later resurrected from the dead. And since then, this Middle Eastern man's life has affected and changed millions of lives and has permanently altered the course of history up until today. Now, for somebody listening to this for the first time, it might sound outlandish or crazy or like some fairy tale, and rest assured, you're not alone. When I was wrestling with this for my faith and asking those same exact questions, I was overwhelmed with the amount of evidence that there is that these events actually took place. There are dozens of written records corroborated by hundreds of eyewitnesses in a time period where written historical records are few, and the sheer number of surviving identical documents from such a short number of years after the events actually took place is undeniable. And so for me personally, this is exactly what I mean when I say that we as people have to make the best decision with the information that we have. Based on the information that I saw, I could not deny that Jesus is who he says he is. And so now the big question is, what does this have anything to do with human brokenness and achieving holiness, and what does this have anything to do with me and the purpose of my life? And that's exactly where learning more about Jesus and growing this relationship with him makes the beauty of the gospel more and more clear each day. The whole point of the gospel is that we as human beings cannot achieve holiness and cannot become more and more like God on our own through our own effort. There's nothing we can do, there's no amount of money we can give, there's no set of rules that we can follow closely enough that will bring us closer to God. That the short of it is that we are fallen, and there's nothing that we can do through our own effort to make ourselves right. And it's only by placing our faith in Jesus, by believing that he is who he says he is, that he died in the way that he said he would, and that he rose again, that we are made right with God. Which is exactly why the Apostle Paul, writing in his letter to the church in Ephesus just a few years after Jesus, writes, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." And so in light of that, how did that reframe my purpose, help me understand why I exist on this earth? Whereas before I was broken and fallen and trapped in this cycle where I would just want to achieve things for myself and constantly striving after things that would leave me empty. Now that I understand that I was redeemed from my brokenness by God's own sacrifice, my purpose is no longer about achieving a name for myself or earning money or anything like that, but instead it's neatly summed up in another one of Paul's letters, this time to the Romans, and he writes, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." And so in light of that, my thinking has shifted. Everything that I do now is for the purpose of bringing glory to God. I'm going to make YouTube videos to the best of my ability because I've been given this gift and these talents as a gift from God. I'm going to go to work and work as hard as I can because I've been given that position and that responsibility as a gift from God. In everything I do, I'm going to bring God glory. My interactions with my parents, my interactions with strangers, with you guys, I'm going to do my best because I understand that I've been redeemed. And this isn't something that I did to deserve, but this was a freely given gift. Now, I just want to say that this doesn't mean that I'm perfect. In fact, I have plenty of times still where I get angry or jealous or I lash out at my parents. But that's the beauty of the gospel. We're not asked to be perfect. It says that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And so God's not asking us for a set of behaviors, but for us to put our faith in what Jesus has already done. And now to come back and talk about why God is more concerned about our holiness than our happiness, I always love this illustration of my parents. Thinking about growing up as a kid, when your parents ask you to do something, or your mom tells you to do this or not do that, those set of behaviors when you're a kid and when you're immature may seem like a bunch of stifling rules. Like, why can't I go do what I want to do? But as you get older and you understand that your parents' rules and the things that they tell you to do are just for your own good. Like, don't stick your finger in the electrical socket because you'll get electrocuted. Don't run by the pool because you'll slip and fall. Those things are meant for your own good. And then eventually you get to a point where you're mature enough to understand that your parents love you and those rules were there for your good. And then you start doing things for them without them even asking. And that's the way that I understand holiness and happiness. God wants that kind of relationship with us, so He's willing to put off our happiness. He's willing to not answer us when we want certain things because He wants us to be close with Him first. And so I hope that gives you guys an idea where I'm coming from. And I just want to say that I appreciate any questions or comments or ideas. Please post them below. I'd love to read your guys' comments and ideas, what I've talked about. But more than that, I hope this makes you guys think for yourself, whether you're a Christian or if you're an atheist, whatever you are, whatever you believe. I hope this makes you stop and think where you are in life. And I hope it makes you consider whether this video is actually God speaking happened to you. I truly believe that in this life there are no accidents, and if you happen to be watching this right now, it's not an accident that you are. And so give it some thought and give it some time, because what I've talked about is freely available to everybody, especially you.